This is an India Today Network exclusive. I'm being joined by the recalled envoy of India to Canada, High Commissioner Sanjay Kumar Varma. After all the diplomatic spat that we've seen between India and Canada over the Khalistani matter, over Hardeep Singh Nijjar's killing, and India's strong position on where it stands when it comes to the investigations and the lack of evidence from Canadian side, Sanjay Verma is joining me to detail out what really happened in Canada, in Ottawa. Thank you so much for joining us here on the India Today Network, High Commissioner Verma. Let's begin with the first thing. The first and foremost is the investigations that are underway. Are there any details, any evidence that has been provided to India at all? Because it does seem like Canada seems to suggest that there is a lot of to and fro that happened between the two sides. But in terms of real evidence, was there anything that India really received from Canada?
Well, thank you very much for having me here. The first thing is that investigations are on, as all of us know, and a channel of communication had been open for a long time. But unfortunately, we have not seen any hard evidence which can be justifiable legally shared with us till today.
All right. There are some reports that say that some of the evidence fall in the realm of a violation of Vienna Convention and is the reason why it's not in public domain. Has anything on that front been shared with you at all as to what they mean?
Not at all. And me and my team, we were carrying out our normal diplomatic and consular duties as defined by the framework of the two conventions, the diplomatic and the consular conventions of Vienna. So we have not done anything to violate the Vienna Conventions. We have been doing our normal duty to see that the India's national interest is served, at the same time to see that our bilateral relations are promoted.
The other thing, there has been one-upmanship when it comes to Canada, and I'll talk about it, and we'd really like to know why is the Trudeau administration behaving in the manner in which they've behaved. It has not been diplomatic in any way, to say the least. But before that, there's a lot of confusion. A lot of people say the Indian side maintains you were recalled. Canadian side says you were declared persona non grata. What happened first?
So let me just run you through the chronology. It was Sunday, the 12th of October, that I was called to visit the Foreign Ministry, which is known as the Global Affairs Canada. We went there in the morning, and I was, after a brief conversation, I was handed over a note saying that I and my 5 colleagues are persons of interest. And the note requested that the Indian side waves off the diplomatic immunity of all of us. I, as the High Commissioner and a messenger between the two countries, I sent it back to Delhi. And the decision was obvious to me if I would have been in Delhi. Then the Delhi called the then Canadian Acting High Commissioner in the Ministry of External Affairs and told him that the government of India has decided to withdraw all the 6 diplomats and officials who have been named as the persons of interest. That was reported back to Ottawa the next day through an email as an attachment to the email. My office received a notification from the Global Affairs Canada saying that all 6 of us have been declared persona non grata. So if you look at the chronology, we were withdrawn by the government of India, and only after that, as a reaction, I would believe, the Canadian government declared us persona non grata.
A lot of threats that your diplomats have faced in the recent past in Canada, and not just the headquarters, not just Ottawa, but also in our consulates in various parts of Canada. How did you tackle those threats? And, High Commissioner Verma, people can say what they want to, that they were not threats. Legally, it's not binding because there are fine print footnotes that are attached to those posters. But bullet written faces of you and your diplomats certainly scream a threat. How did you handle it? What's the kind of direct threat that you really faced?
See, there were continuous threats on us, and the Canadian government did provide us with some security, but the security was provided to me as the High Commissioner and our two Consul Generals in Toronto and Vancouver. But we had many more colleagues than just three of us. We had family members going out in the street and looking at the hooliganism and the threatening posture of the Khalistani extremists and terrorists. Anyone could have been harmed. So security was an issue, not only for the diplomats and officials, but also for their family members, they were easily identified. So as far as the threats are concerned, they continued coming in and day out. But I must also accept that the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, which is the federal policing agency in Canada, they did provide us with some security detail so that at least the three of us, the two Consul Generals and the High Commissioner in Ottawa, they have a protection detail with them, both when they are static, traveling, as well as when they are in the public events.
What's the kind of intimidation? We're saying, threat, but what's the kind of intimidation? Were they carrying weapons? Were they directly coming in front of the diplomats and intimidating them? What really happened?
Most of the intimidation targeting us came through the social media by these two banned organizations through which the Khalistani extremists work. And some of them also came as emails during the so-called protests, which I call as hooliganism, when they gathered in front of the two consulates or the High Commission. They would shout slogans to intimidate us. Whenever we were going in public events, again, the slogan shouting in order to intimidate us. But, we were all prepared for this, and their intimidation tactics did not work. We were there to serve the Indian national interest, and we were bent upon serving them.
That's very important. Talking about national interests, now we are looking at a growing mobilization of the Khalistani movement in Canada, a real breeding ground. And in the recent times, with the Canadian administration being the manner in which they've been and handling the situation, do you think, High Commissioner Varma, that there is a certain space that the Pakistani elements have also gotten to mobilize Khalistani movement against India? How much of complicity do you see of Pakistani establishment here as well?
The way in which we have seen all over the world where the Khalistani terrorists and extremists do work with some of these Pakistani elements. The same thing was reflected in Canada as well. And sometimes the reports that we had seen in media was that they were working hands in gloves, and though the Khalistani terrorists and extremists will come in the front, but behind them there were other forces supporting.